Good morning, hockey fans. It is Tuesday. This is Morning Cuppa Hockey alongside Colby Cohen. I'm Jonny Lazarus. Like we do every Tuesday, we're going to have NHL Insider Frank Seravalli come join the show. So don't be afraid. Get active in the chat. Ask your questions. We're going to ask Frank our own questions. We're going to ask Frank your questions. We're going to talk about all the coaches on the hot seat. We're going to talk about the teams that should buy, the teams that should sell at the upcoming trade deadline. We'll also talk about the games going on in the NHL tonight and perhaps a barn burner last night in Newark, New Jersey between the Devils and the Golden Knights. So there's a lot to get into today. But before we do any of that, I'm going to send it over to Colby Cohen. Colby, how's your morning going? You look tired as shit.
I was literally just going to say to you, you sound like shit this morning. What's going on with you? What, like something, what do you have? No hot water, no heat? Like, were you up late last night? I mean,
That's
what?
exactly what happened. That's exactly what's going on.
What's going on with you this morning, pal?
It's been 6 days of no hot water, no heat in my Brooklyn apartment, but it's being installed right now. And I just got told that we won't have water or heat or hot or cold water all day. So, just a little adversity, but it never hurts anybody and makes you stronger,
But
I
why?
welcome adversity.
But why is it affecting the sound of your voice? You smell like you sound like you smoked a pack of Marlboro Lights last night.
No, I was in the press box of the Devils game, just cheering for the Devils the whole game. So you're not supposed to
I
cheer in the
thought
press
maybe you
box,
were
but
out.
I was pumped up.
I thought maybe you were out chasing some squirrels around.
Good one. You're really bad at shit talk. Like, you got to work on it. If you're going to be mean to me, you at least be good at it.
That wasn't shit talk. I was thinking you were out in New York living your life. I don't think that was shit talk.
You're just digging it deeper. You're digging it deeper. You're making worse. Let's move on. All right, Colby, what do you got hockey-wise for us? We have Frank going on here shortly. What are you interested in asking Frank Seravalli on this fine Tuesday?
Well, before we talk about Frank, why don't we take a moment to recognize the greatness that's happening right now in Boston? I mean, a marquee win for the Boston Bruins last night. I don't think they were real happy with the way that they played against the Winnipeg Jets about, I don't know, 4 weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago. It was right around the break and the holiday, excuse me. And they really got shit kicked in Winnipeg. And they played like it last night because they had an absolutely dominating performance against the Winnipeg Jets. I think they won. It was 4-1 or 5-1. I think it was 4-1.
4-1.
But they were just so thorough with the puck all game. They really just didn't give anything up. Jeremy Swayman continues to play really well. I mean, he's played 7 of the last 8 games for the Boston Bruins, and they're 6-1-3 in their last 10. So this is a team that is trending the right way, where a lot of teams, I think, in the NHL that have had a lot of success this year are currently trending the wrong way. And I just don't think we're talking about the Bruins enough. And I don't know if it's because of the regular season that they had last year where they got into the playoffs and we know what happened against Florida. But Jim Montgomery and the Boston Bruins are absolutely rolling right now.
Yeah, since Christmas, they have the most points in the NHL, 23 points with a 10-1-3 record. I know Edmonton you'd think would be up there, which they are. They just played 3 less games, so that's why there aren't as many points with the Edmonton Oilers. But Boston, since Christmas, they can't stop scoring. They're averaging 4.43 goals per game, and their power play is at a 31.8%. I mean, they're firing on all cylinders, and the first line of Pastrnak, Charlie Coyle, and Brad Marchand has been dominant as well. Charlie Coyle has been the Bruins' first-line center. They've been rotating Coyle, Pavel Zacha, like – it's been crazy what's been going on with the Boston Bruins lineup, and maybe that's why they're not as talked about as much. Like, they don't really have the sexiest, star-studded lineup this year, and they've been missing a lot of guys with injury as well.
Well, I mean, they do have David Pastrnak. They do have a guy by the name of Charlie McAvoy. They do have Jeremy Swayman in net. I mean, they've got star players here. I mean, let's not discount the stars that they have. Here's a question I have for you now that you brought up Pasta. If you have to pick between Matthews and Pasta, who are you taking there?
That's a really tough question.
Okay, but it's not a tough question for me. It's easily David Pastrnak. David Pastrnak is as good a scorer as Austin Matthews, but he competes harder and he plays in all 3 zones. He's more physical. He's to me a much more complete player than Austin Matthews is. And the only reason I think of that is because they're the two most pure scorers in the NHL right now. And I know our producer is probably throwing up right now hearing us talk about this, because I'm sure he's snuggling with his Austin Matthews pillow right now back in Toronto. But I mean, I think David Pastrnak is an underappreciated star in the NHL because of all the things that he does. It's not just the goals; it's everything about him on
I
and
wouldn't say
off
he's
the ice.
underappreciated. I wouldn't say Pasternak's underappreciated.
Yeah, well, how did you even have to think about it then when I asked you between
You
him and
asked me a question.
Matthews?
I took 2 seconds to think, and you didn't want to ask me. You just wanted to go into it yourself.
No, I wanted to hear what you thought, because I figured
I,
you'd do
I
what
said
you
that's a
always do.
tough
You'd sit
question.
on the fence. You wouldn't have an opinion about it. You'd waver
You
back
gave
and
me
forth,
half a
and then
second to think.
you'd have some sort of soft response where you don't take a stance. That's pretty much your middle name.
You literally gave me half a second to think and then went into it. What the hell
All
was
right,
I
well,
supposed
who
to
is
say?
it? You've had
I was
4
gonna
minutes
agree. I
now.
think David Pastrnak also.
All right, so then we put it to bed. All right, maybe we'll ask Frank when we bring him into the show. I'd be curious to hear what he thinks about that.
Give
So,
me half a second.
um, listen, you got to get an answer and get going here. I'm not going to sit around and wait for you to call the Islanders fan base a bunch of scumbags again.
Oh,
We're just
now
not going to
okay,
do
now
that
you're just
today.
bringing
All
in
right,
something
we're just
totally
not going to
different.
do that today.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, look, I think the Boston Bruins are again trending in the right direction. I do, spent a lot of time around that organization. Don Sweeney was heavily involved when I was there. So I'd love to bring Frank in right now and kind of start with the Boston Bruins, because I kind of want to hear from him if he's hearing anything about what's going on in Boston. So good morning, Frank. Good to see you this morning. I know you had some travel back from Western Canada as you dominated the pond hockey tournament with the daily face-off squad.
Dominated by weight, I guess. I mean, I don't
Listen,
know
I
what
love
other category I would have dominated in.
I love the fact that you had the Penn State helmet on out there on the ice. I see the blue strip going down the middle. It's very recognizable. I think that's an iconic stripe. So I was happy to see you giving Penn State a little bit of love this weekend.
Yeah, that's a thefted helmet, so did not earn the stripe, as I was told.
Okay, well, look, we started this morning in true fashion, talking about the Boston Bruins. I asked Jonny who he'd rather have on his team, David Pastrnak or Austin Matthews. I'm sure you heard a little bit of the banter of that back and forth.
There was no back and forth. You just dominated the whole thing.
But I am
such a bully, Colby.
I am curious, Frank, because the Boston Bruins are usually a team that they keep things pretty tight-lipped. They're not a huge leaking group there in Boston. I think Don Sweeney keeps a small inner circle, but you look at their lineup, you look at the success that they're having right now, they're trending in the right direction. I'm just curious, on your trade targets board, is there somebody to you that kind of sticks out, or an area of need that you think the Boston Bruins could potentially be looking to fill?
Yeah, look, it's still the center position. As well as they've played this year, as solid as the production has been, another heater that this team is on. Anytime you think that they're kind of coming back to earth, here they go winning 5 games in a row again and creating some significant separation between themselves and everyone else in the Atlantic Division and, frankly, the Eastern Conference. So to me, I know that they've gotten, you could say, have gotten away with it to this point. But when you look at Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha as your 2 top centers, to me, that's not a team that's destined to go on a deep Stanley Cup run with those 2 guys. If you could get one more, it doesn't even have to be elite, but if you could get one more solid player at the center position, then I think this team would be that much better situated. It just takes the heat and pressure off of those guys. So that's where I've been looking the whole year. What becomes really difficult when it comes to the Bruins is, what assets do you have to make it work? Because they went in so heavy last year, adding the pieces that they did, that just it didn't get them over the top. And now they don't have a pick this year until round 4. They don't have a second next year. They've got 25 and 26 first round picks, but how deep into the future are you going to go? And frankly, after the way the playoffs went last year, I think it's also fair to ask the question, do they have some shell shock from that and are thinking, hey, maybe we just sit tight?
I don't know if they sit tight. I mean, I would go for it because this group, you look at guys like David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand. How many years does Marchand have left? Like, he won't be, with the Boston Bruins organization for that much longer, or in the NHL for that much longer. I'd say he probably has like 4 years left, at most, maybe in his
I
career.
mean, but buddy, that's an eternity in sports.
But in a championship window, is that an eternity? No. Like, this Boston Bruins team's been knocking on the door for the last 8 years now, or it's been 13 years since they won the cup. They could have 3 or 4 cups already with the guys that have been in that locker room that haven't been able to get it done. Like, the fact that Pastrnak hasn't won a Stanley Cup and he's been in the league dominating for as long as he's been, even though, Colby, you just said he's underappreciated. I would actually argue there's another player on the Boston Bruins who might be more underappreciated league wide, and that's Charlie McAvoy. And this might be, a hot take, but if I'm going into a playoff series, I think outside of Cale Makar, the next defenseman I would want on my team in the playoffs is Charlie McAvoy. Like, yeah, you could talk about Quinn
Totally
Hughes
agree.
and Adam Fox and Noah Dobson and Miro Heiskanen and all these defensemen in the regular season, but there is no defenseman.
Quinn Hughes. Sorry, there's a Quinn Hughes.
Did I not say
here.
Quinn? Oh my God, I didn't say Quinn. I
You
love Quinn.
didn't say
Quinn.
Quinn. I'm like,
that's my bad.
like
Quinn Hughes.
McAvoy. Nah.
I'm a big Quinn guy, but I think in a playoff series, the way Charlie McAvoy plays, that's a, Draymond Green said it, and I got to shout out my boy Fitz, who's a New York guy. There's 82 game players and there's 16 game players, and Charlie McAvoy is a 16 game player. That is for sure.
Why? So tell me, what does that even mean?
It means there's guys that thrive in the regular season and guys.
I understand the dynamic of 82 and 16.
Well, you just said, what does it mean? So I was explaining.
What makes him a 16 game player?
He battles his ass off. He's physical. He's not afraid to get in the mix. He's offensive. He can skate. He plays a complete game. He adds value offensively. He quarterbacks a power play. He's just, honestly, he's nails.
Okay, but now you're just listing all the traits that we all know and love about Charlie McAvoy. Frank, look, I want
to give you my hot take. My hot take is that Hampus Lindholm was the Bruins' best defenseman last year.
I think he was throughout the regular season. I agree with that. And then look, they flaked out in the playoffs last year. But look, to me, I think Charlie McAvoy raises his level in big moments. I do. He came into the NHL in the playoffs.
Wait, hold on a sec. Hold on. Stop. Is this Colby agreeing with Johnny that Charlie McAvoy is a playoff player?
We might need a clip of just Colby's reaction, his face when I said McAvoy.
I do. Look. Just remember how he entered the NHL. He came into the playoffs. He was indoctrinated into the NHL in the playoffs. So I think there's something to be said for that. I think Chris Kreider did the same thing a lot of years ago, and I think Chris Kreider's usually turns up his game in the playoffs, pretty well. So look, I think we could probably sit here and kick that around all day. One of the names I was going to ask you about, Frank, was maybe Kevin Hayes. I see him on your trade targets board, and he is a center. He is familiar with the city of Boston. A lot of connection there. I don't think he gets you a king's ransom of a return. So I don't know. Maybe that's the type of guy, because based on what you're telling us about the assets in Boston, I don't see how the Elias Lindholm thing ever actually happens, because you're going to need a lot of assets to bring back Elias Lindholm.
Yeah, and frankly, I don't know that the Calgary Flames are going to want to be dealing in 2025 and 2026 first-round picks. Like, that's a team that by 2026, when their new arena opens, they want to be good again. And that's sort of their target plan of how we can reshape this team in the here and now. So I think they'd probably have to be looking at a lesser price point. And I know this would kind of be like cats playing with dogs, but what about Montreal trading with Boston? And what about Sean Monahan?
That's what I was going to say. Sean Monahan. But Sean Monahan, I feel like as well. Or no, you can go.
I was just going to say, Frank, I mean, I read that article you had up on the Daily Faceoff yesterday where you went deep into Sean Monahan. And the issue that I see with that is the return. I think we're talking about the same thing. I think Monahan's even more valuable because of how low his cap number is and the fact that Montreal is probably willing to eat it. And all the comparables that you put in that article, Coleman, Goudreau, Stasny, they all got first round returns. And
you're looking at one late first round pick. And I don't know that it needs to be this year. maybe 2025 is fine. They have an extra first rounder in 2025 already from taking on Sean Monahan from Calgary. Could you imagine if they end up with 2 2025 first rounders? By the way, the social media reaction to that tweet is priceless. If you have 30 seconds today, scroll through the replies on the tweet that I sent out. It is chef's kiss. Next
Which
up.
About
tweet are we
Calgary?
talking?
Yeah, the Calgary
About
one?
I said that Sean Monahan, when looking through all the comps and everything, at the end of the day, the Canadians should be getting back 2 first rounders. They already got one. That was lost on people. Calgary gave them one to take on Monahan in 2022. Now they should get another one to move him. 55 points, plays, that's what he's on track for. Plays power play, bumper spot, net front, penalty kill, top 5 in the league in left-handed face-off guys. Like, how much more do you want if you can't get, like, I'm thinking there's somewhere in the range of 29, 30, 31 in terms of a first round pick. Not an early one, not a mid one, but a late first rounder seems about right. And people did not, they're like, whatever you're sniffing, whatever you've got at home, can I please have some?
I mean, also,
Never really was much of a huffer though.
Calgary's interesting to me also because I feel like they were a team that was talked about as a team that should definitely sell come deadline time, but they're kind of rolling as of late and they're not out of the playoff picture. And I think a lot of people talked about that trade this summer for Igor Sharangovich and Tyler Toffoli. And, those two have been contributing a lot for their respective teams. I was at the Devils game last night. Toffoli has the hat trick overtime winner.
Oh, good. He finally caught up to Sharangovich.
Yeah, that was a huge thing. I think he has 20 goals now, and Sharangovich has 19. So a lot of people were saying the Devils won the trade finally.
I don't think that's how it works. 6 years
definitely.
older and a pending UFA, not under team control, and you got a third rounder on top of it.
Definitely not. But you look at both of those teams. I didn't mean to get off of Boston, but the Calgary talk triggered my brain a little bit. When you're looking at the Devils and the Flames right now, the Flames are still a team that, sure, they're around the playoff bubble, but they most likely won't be competing for a Stanley Cup, and I'm sure they know that. The Devils, on the other hand, the expectations were through the roof this year, Stanley Cup contender. What is, aside from a goalie, because Lindy Ruff said it last night in the postgame presser, he literally said, I'm always begging for a save. I need more saves. Aside from a goalie, with the injuries the Devils had, they're missing their top 2 defensemen. They're missing their best forward, and they can make all the excuses in the world. But what do they got to do here? Like, do they can't mail it in, right? Even though they've had all these injuries, like, what are you doing right now if you're Fitz?
So I'm looking at it and I'd say, you know what? Sometimes it's just not your year. And can the Devils get in? Can they sneak in and be one of the wild card teams? Yeah, I mean, mathematically, of course they could. But it's really what goes back to what Damon Severson said last week, which I thought was perfect. He said, when I saw that they lost me and Ryan Graves, I knew that they were asking a lot from their young guys. And then it just, the problem was compounded. You take away 2 of your top 6 defensemen, you fill in with 2 incredible pieces that are going to be really good for a long time in Luke Hughes and Simone Nemetz. And you go, okay, this is exciting. We've got a great forward core. We have a team that has won playoff rounds. Let's go. But then Dougie Hamilton tears his pec muscle. And then, go through the list. Jonas Siegenthaler, he's out. Like, you cannot lose 4 of your top 6 defensemen from last year and somehow think that you're going to compete. So what do they need aside from getting a save? They need better defense in front of their goalies. And that's been the huge reason why the Devils have fallen back and are where they are in the standings on the bubble, because everything that could go wrong has.
Yeah.
You made I think a risky bet moving on from your defenseman. Some would say they had to because of the cap position that they were in. But you do that, you're going to take a step back, and that's if Dougie Hamilton stays healthy and Jonas Siegenthaler. So now, like, I was thinking about Boston and their defense core, and I was also running through my head some of the guys that are available, and we talked about the center position. Does Jacob Chikrin make sense for either one of these teams? Boston as a left shot guy, or if you're talking New Jersey to maybe fill some of that void, or are you comfortable saying, you know what? this year happened. If we get in, great. I'm not going to go wild with my future picks to see if maybe on a hope and a whim and a prayer we can force our way in, because then what? Like, I just think they've got too much surgery to accomplish in one OR session.
Yeah, I think
And
Pickard makes more sense
and
for Jersey
Johnny,
than Boston for sure.
well,
Look up.
Johnny, I think the other thing too is that, a coach, I don't see a coach getting fired that's underachieving with this many players out of their lineup and goaltending
I agree.
issues. I don't. And that's, obviously that's more of a question for Frank, like, is Lindy Ruff on the hot seat? But you got to look at these different scenarios differently. It's not a one size fits all approach when you look at the health of a team. And look, generally speaking, teams that stay healthier late in the year have better runs, have better success. I know that's kind of an obvious statement to make, but it does seem, Frank, like there's heavy defensive options right now. And Johnny brought up Calgary as a team that might or might not get in. I would just think that they're still feeling so, uptight about losing Johnny Gaudreau to free agency when they didn't move on from him, to sit tight with Hanifin and Tanev, and
There's no way.
Lindholm,
They're
and
they're making trade. They're
exactly.
ready to do it. They just haven't gotten the offers to do it. They're not
So
sitting here wondering, oh, maybe can we be the eighth? Whoever's the eighth seed in the West, to quote the classic Daryl Sutter, it's a waste of 8 days. That team in the eighth, there's actually a real incentive for someone to finish the number 1 seed in the West, because it's the only easy first round matchup there's going to be. You're going to have 3 really, really good teams in the West lose in the first round this year.
Yeah. So there is a defenseman I'm curious about, though.
Can I
and that's
answer about Lindy Ruff on the hot seat? I
Yeah,
think
go for
there's
it.
actually the same thing going on in Toronto. I don't think either manager is really happy with what they're seeing from their team, but also knows exactly what you said. We're dealing with an incomplete picture here in terms of our roster. The Maple Leafs defense core is frankly worse off than the Devils is right now. And the reason for that is they don't have a Luke Hughes or a Simone Nemitz that's up there chewing up minutes already and playing good. They don't even have that in their pipeline. They're dealing with a number 2, a number 5, maybe another number 4, and like 3 number 7s in their lineup on a nightly basis. That's what the Leafs have. So I don't think Brad Treliving's sitting there going, well, I'm thrilled with Sheldon Keefe. Probably not. And especially not after the comments that he made last week, which was basically the coach coming out and saying, hey, look, I know that people are saying I'm on the hot seat. I need people I can rely on. This isn't my fault. And
Yeah, but are those two
I think
really
that turned up the
comparable though?
temperature a little bit on him. He probably turned it up on himself when a coach comes out and says something like that.
But I don't think those two are really comparable. I mean, you look at Sheldon Keefe versus Lindy Ruff. Lindy Ruff,
Why?
it's his 4th year with the Devils. He had franchise records last year with the Devils. Like
This
literally,
is Sheldon Keefe's 5th year.
Yeah, and what does franchise records in the regular season do?
It's
What does that matter?
it's just progression. It's positive. What's the word I'm looking for? Growth, I guess.
Trajectory.
Trajectory. Yes, thank you for saving me there. But Sheldon
Well, the
Keefe,
Devils have gone like this.
because of injuries this year. But when Lindy Ruff took over, he's gotten them to be a better group since he took over. Sheldon Keefe, he's just disappointed.
Let me ask you I'm just playing devil's
The Leafs
advocate
have been
here.
more built to win than the Devils.
Well, wait a sec.
Mhm.
Which team got further last year?
They both got to the same exact spot.
Okay. Well, when you look at where they're heading, like I don't know that I would agree.
I
Like,
don't
which
either.
team's more on the upswing?
Toronto has way more potential to do
Toronto?
more right now than the Devils.
I think if both teams are fully healthy,
Oh,
Which
well,
team?
fully
Which
healthy,
one
but
would you pick? Which core would you pick?
well, that's what I'm thinking right now. Now I'm trying to think.
I think I'm taking the Devils.
I like the
well,
Devils. Yeah.
fully healthy. If fully healthy,
yeah.
yeah. But we're not living. But that's fantasy, Johnny. No, they're not fully healthy. They're far from it.
We're talking about Lindy Ruff and Sheldon Keefe being on the hot seat, but that you have to take all the measures into account. If it's a fully healthy team, like you just said, you can't fire a coach because of injury issues.
Yeah, but
I
I
think
agree
there's
with
been
that.
enough
And
friction there.
What?
But here's what I'm gonna say. Where Frank is talking about the Heat getting turned up on Sheldon Keefe basically because of what he said. Look, their roster is flawed in Toronto, but okay, managing the puck and having players play harder in their own zone, that's a mentality. That's coaching. That's why Patrick Waugh now coaches the New York Islanders, okay? Because they were underachieving defensively. They were underachieving managing the puck. Okay, they were doing things that Lou Lamoriello thought were related to the coaching and the way the coach was holding the players accountable. I do think that's a problem in Toronto, one way or the other. You just watch the way Austin Matthews has been late in games and how his line's been out on the ice for goals against late in games. To me, that you can point back at the coach in situations like that. So it will be interesting really to see kind of how these teams go. Again, like I think we all like to fire coaches every week on every show in
That's not
America
true.
and Canada, but
We don't want guys
I
to lose
don't
jobs.
I don't think it's going to happen quite as frequently as we all think. So let's move on from there because there's another team that's interesting to me, Frank, that I want to ask you about, and it's the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's another team that is completely ravaged by injuries. I mean, they are missing Theodore and Eichel and Aiden Hill and I mean, you
Carlson.
look at Carlson. I mean, they're missing a lot of marquee players, and you can go look on the dailyfaceoff.com. Look at Vegas's line chart right now. There's going to be some names you don't recognize, but when you scroll to the bottom, there's an absolute myriad of guys that are injured. Now, we've seen the Vegas Golden Knights impatient since they came into the NHL. They're an impatient franchise. The way they bring in, move on, let players, coaches go, whatever. They like to make moves. They are trending in the wrong direction. They have some guys that have sustained some injuries that have a little bit of time. They're at the max on contracts, Frank. They're 50 out of 50 contracts right now. NHL teams only get 50 NHL contracts. Is there something that they may look to do, or is this another situation of just we're just too banged up? And let me just read you this quote from Bruce Cassidy last night, a guy that I played for years and a guy that I know is going into that general manager's office saying, "What the fuck is this? I can't play with this group." And he said, "We basically played a beer league game. We thought it was preseason, I guess. Careless and disrespectful to the game. We have a veteran decor, and they were not very good tonight as a group." I mean, that is such a Bruce Cassidy string of quotes if I've ever heard them. But what's Kelly McCrimmon thinking out there in Vegas right now? Kind of flying under the radar because they're in a playoff spot, but trending in the wrong direction.
Trending in the wrong direction for a long time, honestly. Injuries, sort of obviously factor into that, but 11-0-1 start to the season, that got them into November. Since then, they're 16-14-5, so barely above 500. The fact that they've continued to hold down the number 2 spot in the Pacific is a testament to not just how well they played to start, but also really how the NHL's point system works. You get off to an unbelievably hot start, and then you can kind of milk points the rest of the way. To answer your question about the deadline, I think it's wait and see. That's not a sort of Pollyannish answer from me. What that is how do we know what the situation is with Jack Eichel when it comes to March 8th? We had a lower body surgery. I don't know how they accomplished all of that in one day on the operating table. But was that both knees, hips? Like what happened there in that
Sports
lower
hernia
body
could
surgery?
be,
Like
yeah.
that was unreal. I've never even seen that before. He had surgery on his lower body. What? And he's week to week. Okay. So is it like month to month? Like how many weeks are we talking here? Is it 6 weeks? Is it 12 weeks? And then what happens with the cap? So Eichel's money, is it on the table or not? If it is, if he's out, are you filling at the center position, which they could probably certainly use? Are you listening to Bruce Cassidy and his quotes yesterday saying, okay, they need more help on defense? Obviously, Shea Theodore being out, that's a huge piece. He's been out since November 26th. I mean, they need help in so many different areas that it's impossible to sit here today and pinpoint for you and say, you know what, the Golden Knights, they're going to go after that. All I know is in their practice facility and, being there the day that the team was named, Bill Foley, their owner, the Knight never retreats. The Knight never backs down. That's ingrained in their sort of core philosophy. So will they, after finally accomplishing their goal in year 6, will they kind of sit back at this deadline and say, oh no, maybe not for us? I doubt it, especially with Hill coming back at some point and how well he played to start this year. 933 save percentage, a big reason why they got off to the start that they did, but they're kind of in trouble right now and treading water.
But is Vegas ever really in trouble just with, everyone wanting to go play there and free agents wanting to sign there and just everything they've done in that organization, they've done it the right way. Like, it's not like Vegas is ever going to have to rebuild or anything, right? I know they're facing injuries right now. Maybe the trade deadline might be, up to question.
I totally disagree with that. I think every team is going to have to rebuild at some point. You can't just be the New York Yankees. This isn't. There's a salary cap in hockey, Johnny.
It's cyclical. So yeah,
you're going.
I mean, look, at some point, Alex Pietrangelo, he's 34.
Yeah,
like that. At some point toward the end of that deal, it's fine now, but 2025, 26, and 26, 27, like. He's going to be hurting at some point. You're already
Marchessault's not getting any younger. Carlson's not getting any younger. Theodore's not getting. I mean,
let me stop you there.
20-year-olds.
Who among us is getting younger? It's not possible physically.
Well, but I'm just saying these aren't 21-year-old players. These are players in their late 20s and some into their 30s. I think Marchessault is got to be into his 30s already.
He's 33.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not talking about a bunch of spring chickens, Johnny. So to think that they're never going to have to rebuild, I mean. Again, what are we doing? NHL fantasy mode on your video game?
I might be too young.
In real life,
I might be too young to remember a time, but I literally am sitting here and I can't think of any window where the Boston Bruins had like a rebuild.
The Bruins were terrible, like up until 2000 and what, like 8 or 9. I mean, they were like really bad for a while.
Maybe I was too young to remember, but
you were playing with your Pokemon cards and your Tamagotchi, probably rolling around in your.
Oh my god, he probably doesn't even know what that is.
I know what Pokemon is,
but since I doesn't know what Tamagotchi is.
No, not a clue. I was just a Nintendo 64 guy. But
yeah, right. That's a lie. You were not old enough.
Mario Kart and Nintendo 64. Yes, I was. And then Xbox came out when I was like 7. But you know what I'm saying though? Like a team like Boston.
The bigger concern for Vegas is that because they've been as aggressive as they've been, they don't have a ton by way of prospects.
Nothing.
And they've been trading their picks for the most part. The fact that they have all of their picks for these next 3 years is actually kind of impressive. They've gotten back to level ground, but they're going to need to start making those picks instead of trading them away. Because Colby, you're right. At some point, the cycle catches up with you and you're going to be in trouble for a number of years unless you continue to replenish.
Frank, I don't want to get too off topic, but we do have a question in the chat. And funny enough, it actually is from the guy in the room next to me, my roommate, Rowan Savadant, who is a huge Ottawa Senators fan. It's actually a really good question. He said, what isn't working in Ottawa? Currently sitting in last in the Eastern Conference. Who in the core is most expendable?
Well, that's exactly what general manager Steve Staios and assistant general managers Dave Poole and Ryan Bowness are figuring out at this exact moment. And, it's funny because Jacob Chychrun is on my trade targets board. And I'm not really convinced that they want to move him, but they're facing a question in terms of who is part of that core where they've signed a bunch of guys to long-term deals thinking that they all would be. And I'm going to include Thomas Chabot in that category. My guess, if everything was equal and everyone made the same dollars and had the same contract scenario, the guy that they'd probably prefer to move the most is Chabot. Keep Chychrun. Obviously, Sanderson. Like, I think Sanderson is going to be in the Norris Trophy conversation in 2 years. keep Sanderson, keep Chychrun, and then move Shabbat. But the problem is he's got all those years left and he's at $8 million.
Mhm.
It's kind of a tough spot. There's way more value for them, all three of those guys being left shot guys, to move Chychrun because he doesn't make a lot right now. He's under $5 million. And you have one more year. So if you're acquiring Chychrun at this deadline, you get 2 playoff runs out of him at under $5 million. Yes, you need to ask the question this summer, are we re-signing this guy or not? And that's sort of the process that the Sens are going through right now. Okay, if we're going to keep Chychrun, let's go to his agent. How much are you looking for? What's a fair number? Does he vault up into the, to the Shabbat stratosphere in terms of AAV next year? Probably a little bit south of that. But again, that's just the defense part of who's part of this core moving forward that they're really trying to sort through. And I don't think they have answers quite yet. I think they're hoping to find more in the next 7 weeks.
I want to follow up quick on that before Colby cuts me off because I know he wants to so badly. But when you look at teams on paper, is Ottawa just the biggest what the hell happened here? Because I think you look at the roster and the talent they have, both offensively and defensively, maybe not in goal, but I just can't believe how poor they've been this season with the amount of talent they have on that roster.
I agree. And the only other team that I kind of look and say, what the hell happened here, is the Flyers, but in a good way. Like, it blows my mind that core of players has achieved the success that they've had this year. And frankly, the consistency that they've had, it's a true testament to how hard they've worked. And it shows you the big thing coming up for the Flyers is now, as everyone else ramps up to that level, the games get harder to win. How does your talent come through? But when it comes to the Sens, yeah, like I'm right there. Like Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, Josh Norris. Like I look at that group and I'm like, how is it possible that they are not even close to the playoff hunt? Like the fact that they are
18 points out.
Well, yeah, no, the fact that technically by points in the standings, not by points percentage, they're below the Columbus Blue Jackets, who, to me, the Blue Jackets have been the biggest disaster organization in the NHL. How's that possible? And you know what? I'll take it a step further. The numbers have gone like this since Jacques Martin took over. No offense. This is not ageism. I said it at the exact day that he was hired. 71 years old, by far the oldest coach in the NHL. Do everyone a favor on that organization and bring in someone who's your next permanent coach, please. It's not good to go through this. I know that they're saying, oh, well, he can instill some fundamentals. Really? Like, are we going to do power skating out there too on Tuesday nights? Like what? Like, I'm sorry. You need to hire a coach, and that needs to happen soon-ish. And then you can get a better evaluation of your core.
Well, Frank, I'm sorry we just wasted so much of your time talking about the team in last place. But if we're going to go down that road, I think it's fair to tee up, my favorite tweet of the year. And it's from my buddy, Jonny Lazarus, Johnny Drama, Johnny Sunshine and Rainbows. And, this was one of his preseason predictions right here. And it says, for those of you who aren't watching YouTube, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube. But if you are listening on your podcast platform, it says, I'll bet my life that the Ottawa Senators make the playoffs. And that was on September 25th of 2003. Now, Johnny has a lot of bad takes pretty consistently, but this is definitely up there as one of his worst. I quickly responded to that. I hope you're an organ donor. So, Frank, I know you probably got to go, but I do want to ask you about.
By the way, I would have bet that the Sens made the playoffs this year. They were one of my playoff teams. I definitely wouldn't have bet my life because I value it too much. But apparently that's not how it works over there in Brooklyn.
Well, he says a lot of stupid shit. So
to be fair, I didn't say when they made the playoffs. I didn't say when
the last team that I am curious about, Frank, that's the LA Kings. Okay, this is a team that's 2-4-4 in their last 10. They lost last night in a shootout to San Jose. We've seen coaches lose their jobs over losing to teams like San Jose and Chicago this year. And I'm not saying I think Todd McClellan is going to lose his job today by any means.
Because he's not.
Right. So, but look, this is a team that had a phenomenal first, let's say, quarter to half of the season, but again, trending in the wrong direction. Okay. You watch them play, their neutral zone has been nowhere near as effective. Um, Rob Blake doesn't seem like a guy who's going to sit on his hands. He moved off of Jonathan. I mean, he's not been afraid to do things to, juice his roster, whether they've worked or they haven't. Whether it's the PLD trade, um, for Velarde and moving on from Jersey. I mean, there's been a number of moves. So, what do you see in the future for the LA Kings, who are now occupying a wild card spot for the first time since the opening week of the season?
Yeah, by the way, the Oilers can catch the Golden Knights on the other side of the All-Star break. They've got 4 games in hand, but they can catch them right as soon as they play each other on Feb 6th. They've already passed the Kings, and the Kings are another team, 13-3-3 to start. They're 9-10-6 since then. So south of 500. And the funny thing is, everyone wants to say, well, their goaltending just hasn't been as good. And certainly Cam Talbot, jumping out to a .930 save percentage. I'm not sure that anyone really saw that coming. But I have to say that even since then, in that stretch that I just mentioned, he's still .897. So south of league average, but not by that much. And it can't all be on him, is my point. It's not really a team like New Jersey or some of the other ones that we're talking about this morning that has been crushed by injuries. Victor Arvidsson has been the guy that's been out. He's coming back. In fact, the Kings had some preliminary discussions with Corey Perry and then had decided that with Arvidsson coming back, that they probably couldn't afford him. And that's sort of where it fell apart, or certainly by role or spot. I don't like the tough part about the Kings is outside of shoring up their backup goalie position, because I don't think Phoenix Copley or David Riddick are it. I don't look at this Kings team and say, you know what, there's the hole. Like, tell me where in their forward group they're stacked 3 deep at center. They've got great wingers. Their defensemen are solid. In fact, they were one of the few teams that had too many right shot defensemen. Brant Clark, go back and forth with him and Jordan Spence and the young guys that they have. And they're like, I'm looking at it going, I don't even know where you'd add if you wanted
Well,
to.
maybe it's player for player, because 10-9 and what did you say?
9-10-6.
9-10 and I mean, that's bad. That's not just like a 5-game slump. That's 2 months of bad hockey.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. But player for player, what are you, like, doing this on NHL 23? Like, no one does that anymore. There are no hockey trades anymore. That never happens.
Well, Frank, the last
Is
team
that too
that I
much to
want
ask?
no. But there is one more team I want to ask about, and this also comes from the chat. D. Ely, he wants to know about the Carolina Hurricanes goaltending situation, and if there's a team in the NHL that needs a goalie more than Carolina. I know we talked about the Devils, but this Carolina team has been in that win now window for probably north of 5 years, and if there's anyone that needs a goalie right now to win a Stanley Cup, it's probably them. What do you think about the Carolina Hurricanes goaltending situation?
Well, look, this is what you get when you go into the year with Freddie Anderson and Antti Ranta again. I know they had Pyotr Kochetkov waiting. He had signed that 4-year deal for $8 million, and you're thinking, okay, he'll be the guy if things falter. And then he absolutely stumbled out of the gate to start this year with an .875 save percentage. The thing is, he's actually really turned around his game since U.S. Thanksgiving, and he's got a .908 and a pretty decent record. So he bounced back, but at the same time, when you're looking at this Hurricanes team and their injury situation, like Kochetkov finally is playing really well. He's been out for the last 12 days with a concussion after that hit that he took. And geez, they cannot get a break. I think this Canes team, they're sort of been playing somewhat average all year, and that's not really like them. Like, they've kind of sailed through regular seasons these last few years. And I actually, when you look at their team, I had Seth Jarvis on, frankly speaking, he's my guest this week. And he was saying like, this has been his hardest year of hockey at any point in his career, because he's never been on a team at any point that has lost the way that this Canes team has lost. And so in an odd way, I think that could actually be beneficial for them in the long run. The goalie situation is obviously something to continue to watch. I don't think that they can continue on with Antti Ranta and Yaniv Peretz. But I think they could. The one thing that's really standing out to me when watching the Canes, and I think it's been their Achilles heel when it comes to the playoffs, they don't have the super duper star. They don't have that guy that just picks you up and carries you. And I mean, even look at their team this year. They have one guy, and it's Sebastian Aho, because it's always been Sebastian Aho. Only one guy north of a point per game, and he's at 51. They've got a great balanced depth scoring approach, but there's no one that comes in on that team outside of their decor and knocks your socks off. And I think that's one thing that hurts.
Well, Svechnikov's hurt now, but he was on fire before injury. He had like 8 goals in his last 10 games. He was on a really hot stretch as of late. And I will say, and Colby, like, call us a take, whatever you want. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to win the Met. And I'm very confident in saying that. I think they've been trending in the most positive direction of any team in the Met. And
all right, so what are you gonna bet your life on it or what?
No, I'm not gonna bet. I'll bet my second life on it, maybe. But
Okay.
and I will
say
say,
we need some kind of wager. Like here, I'm writing down Rangers guy says Hurricanes win the Met.
I don't think it's such a hot take though.
Sacrilege.
They've won the Met like the last 4 years in a row. I don't think it's like so crazy.
Frank, he's in this phase right now where he's feeling sorry for himself and he's sulking about the Rangers. It's like this whole puppy dog routine.
I was actually
he's going through like his 7 stages of grief right now. So before we let you go, Frank, our friend on Twitter wants to know, Pizza Sports Guy, he wants to know, what product do you use in your hair? Because, buddy, your hair does always look so good. It really does. Like, it's early in the morning. Jonny has God knows what's happening with his hair. I got a hat on, but here comes Frank Sir. Oh, that's right. No hot water. But, buddy, your hair, it's like, it looks great.
It's the only thing I have. I mean, that's all you got. You got to take care of it. I use American Crew pomade. That's it.
There we go.
That's the answer.
And now we're going to have to get him as a sponsor of the show. So, Frank, we took 45 minutes of your time today. Sorry about that. I know you were just supposed to come
45
on
minutes.
I
won't get back.
Exactly. I know Jonny makes you feel dumber every time you talk to him. We appreciate your time today, Frank. We'll have you on again next Tuesday. I know next Tuesday it'll just be you and Jonny, so you'll have to fill my role of bullying Jonny for 30 to 40 minutes.
Nice. I like
it. I jet off to Boston.
Compliments for a whole hour.
Jonny, stay quiet. All right, go sit in the corner.
Before you interrupted, Colby, I was going to answer your question yesterday that you tweeted at me. Which fan base am I?
All right, but let Frank go. The guy has a life. He has kids. He has jobs. He has shows. He has writing. Can we let him go?
All right, Frank, you're free.
See you guys.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
All right, Jonny, ask me your stupid question, and then let's wrap the episode.
Well, you tweeted at me yesterday, which fan base am I going to torch this week? And I just complimented the Hurricanes by saying they're going to win the Met, but that's my least favorite fan base in the NHL. I can't stand her. I cannot stand Hurricanes fans. They annoy the shit out of me. And
but why? Give me some reasons.
It's from one playoff series against the Rangers 2 years ago. They think it's a rivalry now. People say the Hurricanes and Rangers is a deep-rooted rivalry. They had one playoff round. Like, we don't hate the Hurricanes at all. And I think the Hurricanes.
All right, so ready? Here we go. Ready?
What? Yeah.
I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Okay. I want you to talk as much shit as you can to the Carolina Hurricanes fan base in 10 seconds, and then I want you to wrap the show. Can you do that?
I don't really know what to say about them personally. They just annoy me. They're always in my Twitter mentions complaining.
You can't even have a backbone. I can't even have a backbone when you're talking shit.
They just complain that no one cares about them. Like, and they're a good team that gets talked about, and people just whine that they're.
Listen, I love Rod Brindamore, and so I'm not going to throw any shade or disrespect towards Carolina fans, the Hurricanes organization. Love Trip Tracy. A lot of good players down there. Love Brady Shea. TDA back there. I know he's not playing, but he's a Philly boy. So I don't agree with you. I like the passion coming out of Carolina. I wish that passion would have driven the Atlanta, what were they called? The Atlanta Thrashers to having more success. So That's all the time we're going to have today, Johnny. Don't forget to like and subscribe the DFO YouTube page. We were glad we were able to get to some of your questions today. I know we took some Twitter questions. Thanks to Frank. As always, make sure you check out his trade targets, which are all over the DFO website, all over his social media. And that's going to be it for today. Johnny, you got a last word, pal?
Yeah, D. Ely goes, as a former Ranger fan and now a Canes fan, I can tell you we do not like Ranger fans either. So happy to spread the hate and the love in a good way, I guess, whatever you want to say it. But Jeremiah Maxwell, also, who's always active in our chat, says,
It's our boy.
a Ranger fan talking about toxic fans, LOL. And I will say, Ranger fans are probably the honest. Devils fans are very toxic too. The Devils go down last night and they're chanting "Fire Lindy" in like the first period. Like, it's insane. A lot of toxic fan bases out there, and I won't shy away from saying that the Rangers are one of them. But yes, I don't like Canes fans. You cannot like me back. It's fine. I will end the show at that, unless you got one more thing you want to say.
Have a good rest of your day. Thanks for listening.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.